Hello, I'm Maddie. I'm going to talk to you about the ADHD Notion task template that I've developed in order to attempt, some executive function out of nowhere. I just hosted a Zoom with some of my friends going through this, and we recorded it in hopes of that being something I could then share out.
And then things turn into an absolute shit show.
But because everybody sort of shared their personal, I decided to make a very brief, condensed version of my sort of tutorial and prioritize doing it while I'm actually on ADHD medication. So I don't use like as a filler word 7,000 times and go off topic a bunch and whatnot. So hopping into that, this is what the template looks like. So one of my things that I like to do is change out the cover for something fun. So I uploaded this. It's a really fun piece of art on the game of life of ADHD, but that's, I think, one of the best things to kind of create a mood for yourself. And, there's so many aesthetic things that you can swap out for, but the most important things up top here are mostly that I pin any super high priority like motivation, reminders, whatever, and just like general top priorities for the week here. And then I also just have a clock so I can have some better time wisdom and awareness that like, I started working on this at 3, so I've already spent 19 minutes just getting set up. Love that. But yeah, this is the bulk of the template. This is pretty much it. And I said this a lot on the Zoom, but my rationale here is to keep it as simple and as streamlined and consolidated as possible to prioritize actually doing it instead of spending a ton of time on formatting it. So my caveat that I'm not an expert on it, but this is what helps me to kind of feign executive functioning, and that there are so many different templates and galleries and widgets and things, but I try to keep it a little simpler. I did pin this Pomodoro timer one here for if that's helpful for anybody, and you can go crazy with it, but my caution is to not spend so much time on the organizing and formatting of them that you neglect the actual doing of the tasks. And I think everyone can relate to that to some extent, but especially if you have a brain like this. And so this was one of the main memes that I would send people to kind of explain like how different it is for me, where it's not just like falling into a bucket nicely, it's everything all at once, especially with having the spectrum in the mix as well. And so I made the caveat that Notion isn't the only thing keeping me duct taped together, so I also use this physical whiteboard and sticky note system. I'll put in some pictures, but basically I like the whiteboard because it's very modular. I don't feel precious about it. You can erase and be messy, but then I like having the tasks be more concrete on the stickies so that they can't get lost or get erased. And I like to be able to move them around based on how my day has gone. I didn't pull it over here with me to record with, but yeah. And then if I've done it manually on my whiteboard, I'll make sure that those stickies get moved over and logged as tasks here instead. And that's what that looks like. So then you can move things into completed. You can move any bucket around, really. Right now, all my tasks are stuck in yesterday. There we go. Because I haven't moved them over. But so for example, what I'm going to do is all of these that I didn't quite get done today, but they were kind of top priority. I'm going to go to edit property, complete by, and swap it to today instead. And so now those have all come over here, and I can, reprioritize them as such. So for example, we have a lot of things in the next 10 days bucket for Colin flagged over here. And, okay, we talked about the patent filing, for example, so completed. We'll move that over. We need to talk about it more, though. So realistically, what I would have actually done is move it over here to the Colin bucket. So Colin is my co-founder, so I have things for me, both of us. So this is a good example that I put in here as a rolling to-do for myself, because I don't actually need to spend 3 hours making more Jinx hoodies right now, but I just think I probably should before I go to LA, so I have some to take with me. And so I put it in here and then now have it categorized there. Although for something like this, where it's not quite so rolling, I treat rolling like I really don't have a set time that it has to get done by quite yet, but I just want it to be somewhere. If it's more rolling in the sense of this task where I need to probably do this in the next 2 weeks or so, I can, again, just edit that and modify it to be like, okay, so I get back on Sunday night and then I have one more week in New York. Sad. So maybe I'll set the due date as like February 1st. And so now I know that it'll come up for me and it's going to disappear. It won't be in the next, it won't just disappear into the ether. Like it's going to be there and available for me. And it'll remind me on that day when I get to it. So with the actual template and being able to do this, it's nice because you don't have to start from a blank page. Everything's in there. And that's a big piece of advice is, obviously trying to slow burn, like break your larger projects into smaller components so you're more motivated to actually start them. And that for me, what I was saying was that statements of self-efficacy, like I can do this and I've been doing it over a certain amount of time, so I've built up that trust and consistency with myself. That's really helpful. So trust equals time times consistency is a one that I like to internalize and be like, okay, I'm going to just commit to trying this for a while. And I probably did for a couple months and was doing what I had said before about like changing my template a lot and switching my workflow. Once I had spent like 5 or 6 months just using this template and like starting to build it up, I had a lot more self-trust that I was actually logging the things that I needed to do. And my other more like physical version of that is that I also keep all the stickies that I complete. It's like a reminder that I can accomplish things. And so, I feel like that is sort of emulated here too with when I go to my version of this, right? Like it's nice to be able to be like, oh my God, look, 1,400 completed tasks this year, woo. The tricky thing is that things can kind of hide themselves. So I like that because it's less messy, right? Like all of these things are now hidden, but you can also lose stuff that way. So if you need to like go back and say, oh, I actually need stuff out of the last 7 days, which like I definitely do. For example, look at all this craziness. This is all stuff that needs to be like recategorized because it's a bunch of little bits and pieces. And something I maybe didn't mention yet is that I've been trying to improve my time wisdom by putting that timestamp of like, okay, I think this is going to take me 15 minutes. So like I did that one today, right? So like add it to the Jinx story. I did that or whatever, right? Like things like that where you can try to attach like a little bit of a timeline to them. And if it doesn't end up happening, then that just kind of it is what it is how I treat it. And I just move it into the today category instead, right? So we already did that, but that'll be edit property. Maybe I'll put all of those in tomorrow so they can still kind of be in their own separate bucket to be evaluated. So what that looks like on this side of things in the like more blank template is this, and the buckets that I left that I find helpful are a waiting queue. So we talked about this on the call too, but basically, if I said 15 minutes, text roommate about rent or something. But then if I'm waiting to hear back from them, and I don't want to say that was in my to-dos today. If I've done that and I don't want to move it to completed yet because, it's actually not quite completed yet, if that makes sense. Like maybe I'm waiting on someone else externally for that last piece. I really appreciate having this bucket here to use that. And then at the end of the week, I kind of will go through and be like, okay, do I need to bump people over text or email about any of these? Pin for later is kind of just more general besides the rolling because, again, there's just so many tasks obviously all at once. And so whatever kind of buckets make sense in your head for breaking them down, feel free to swap out. But I keep texting and social separate and personal separate. And then I just included this as an example. So you could do your meeting notes in here as well. I have all of it in a different bucket over here on the side, but it would essentially function as the same thing if you were to put all of your meeting notes in here. There are also templates. And so, for example, if you were going to do a task today, and these two are examples of templates, but maybe you were between tasks and you're feeling a little burnt out and you need to do a check-in with yourself, you can do that by clicking this and it auto-populates with the template that I've left in here for you. And so it's Jinx branded, you can switch that, but Yeah, this is my like tried and true 4-step method, or at least tried and true for myself and a lot of my friends who like this. So you name it to tame it is ask yourself, how are you feeling more specifically? I put the big wheel in here so you can kind of like evaluate this and get more granular if possible. And then body mapping is something I've been learning a lot more about from my like autistic community groups, and that looks like understanding where you're feeling heat or cold actually has a lot more tied to your emotions than I feel I was previously giving credit for. So thinking about that and then trying to do some grounding breaths, so like box breaths. Oh yeah, I was going to include, I'll include this here. But anyway, what stories are you telling yourself and what stories could be true are the more cognitive back half of that. And I won't go into it too much, but highly recommend trying to use this whenever you can as like a template for yourself to do that little bit of a check-in and show yourself some kindness when you've got a brain that works like ours and can be pretty harsh, especially when you're doing task management, right? Because it's like there's so much shame around all of these things. Like I felt the shame when I opened this up and I realized how much was still in that. And that's not including the 52 that must be in complete ed, right? And so it's just this I feel like I feel like this aligns with what one of my business coaches says. Her name's Tara, and she always says more data, less drama, right? And like more data, less drama, more data, less drama. I try to like ingrain that into myself of like, instead of beating myself about like not getting enough stuff done or not being productive enough, try to be more data about it. Like how much time are these tasks realistically taking me? Am I aligning with my own expectations when I say that something is going to be 15 minutes or not? And that's all tools to work on your time wisdom. And so that's in this next section. So we already talked about the emotional processing piece. This just like has some more information on like where I got it from and stuff. But one of the other metaphors is this idea of the wall of awful. I pinned it here for if you want to read it or if you want to watch it, but I'll just do a brief explanation on it. And imagine that between you and accomplishing any task is this wall, and each time you're giving yourself self-criticism or shame about it, it's sort of adding bricks and building it higher, and it's infinitely long, so you can't go over or around it. And so there are 5 ways that people kind of tend to approach getting over the wall, and those are bulleted out as either lashing out at other people or at yourself, or going into task avoidance mode, which isn't ever helpful for anybody, or yeah, exactly. So this is it. They're saying there are 5 ways to get around it, and climbing it is about either putting in doors for yourself or handholds over time. And so I put those in here because I feel like this has been really helpful and compelling to me about figuring out what my doors are. Is that going to be putting on music? Is that going to get me through this like big emotional wall barrier against me and doing either a specific tasks or just tasks in general if I'm like having that type of day? So caffeine, social pressure, going and exercising to increase your body doubling, whatever. Those are all door examples that could make it easier for you to get through and push and do it, or handholds. And so that's like things that in the long term will be more beneficial for you to climb any type of wall. So that's time wisdom, and medication can be really big. I'm not going to get into that, but yeah. This is also interesting, this idea of your head as a houseboat. I'm going to pin more content and creators here, but that just sort of is what this section is. And so if you're feeling that wall of awful and you really are, struggling to get something done, you can come in here and try to be more concerted about 5-minute door, get snack. I have to put these things in there for myself to really remind that this is just the reality of how my brain works, and you got to do it. Val, you want to come say hi? I'm just recording. I'm just re-recording.
Well, I was just working on my template.
Val's working on her template. Yep, and I think that's a wrap. If you have questions, obviously, hit me with it, but there are tons and tons of templates if you want to go online and get something that's specific for meal planning or working out or dream logging or whatever. And I just will continue my caution that I already said of try not to spend too much time on the formatting and the beautifying, because that's important, but it really can just suck focus where maybe the focus needs to be on actually replying to emails or doing code or going and doing one of the doors or the handholds for yourself. And yeah, try to insert that as a nudge wherever you possibly can.
Whenever I get into this state of, I do the same thing. I start spiraling and then I'm like, fuck, I've lost focus. And now I'm aware that I've lost focus and I just like spiral from it. I'll like go outside and either like dance or like fucking just do something kind of crazy, like get energy out of my system. So in Tulum, like they had a playground and we would go like swing on the swings and like do like the monkey bars and shit like that. And then I would go back and I would feel like, okay, cool. Like I can focus again. I can work. And it's weird because, you know, like when we were in elementary school, they took us out on the playground for a reason.
Recess.